Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. 8 years in office, recognized as the nation's most popular governor as he prepares to wrap up his tenure. A chance to look back and a chance to look forward. The governor is at the desk. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. It's great to have you with us this morning. And our guest, as you can see, needs little introduction. He is the 72nd governor of the Commonwealth. Charlie Baker is with us, first taking office in January of 2015. He will wrap up 2 terms of service in January of 2023. A Republican, a resident of Swampscott. He served in the administration of Governor Bill Weld as Secretary of Administration and Finance and Secretary of Health and Human Services. He holds degrees from Harvard and Northwestern. Have I ever asked this before? Do you say Swampscott or Swampscott? How do you say
I'm
it?
a Swampscott guy.
Yeah, I'm a Swampscott guy, too.
I have no
but I know
idea
some
what the
Swampscotts.
I don't know.
Right. I've heard both.
Well, both of you guys are from Massachusetts originally, so
I've heard both.
I would say you're right. Okay.
There's only one way to pronounce it.
Worcester and Leicester. Right,
there you go.
right.
So let's get started. Pardons often happen at the end of an administration, and you've begun to issue some of them. 2 of them went to Gerald Emerald and Cheryl Emerald Lefebvre, who were convicted in the Fells Acres daycare abuse case, and this was back in the 1980s. Do you believe they were innocent?
I think the fundamental question in that case was the issue associated with the nature of the investigatory and the interrogation procedures and policies and practices that were used at the time, which many judges and other experts since then have raised serious questions about. And there are a lot of judges who raise serious questions all the way through about what happened then. And people use the tools that are available to them when they engage in these proceedings, but it's pretty clear those tools came with a lot of flaws, and I think from our point of view, the right decision at this point, which is one that was recommended by a number of people throughout this process, is that we should pardon both of them.
So it's not a statement on their innocence, and their sentences still stand, but they are going to be released. Is that the best way to?
Well, they're going to be pardoned, which means, for all intents and purposes, it's the equivalent of, an expungement, and they won't have to engage in any of the activities associated with what comes with their current standing while they're on parole.
Item 2, and let me preface it by saying we do understand you have no control over it, but there is a lot of chatter about you as a presidential candidate in a couple of years. So let me just flat out ask you directly, can you see yourself making a run for the White House in 2024?
I think if I was looking at this point in my career to continue to engage in public service, I think Lauren and I and Karen Polito, the lieutenant governor, and her husband Steve would have run for another term. I certainly plan to be involved in 2024, but I think the likelihood I'd be on the ballot in 2024 is pretty small.
So, optics are everything, or maybe nothing. So if that's what your judgment is, but for what, the 8 years you pretty much stayed away from national attention, national interviews, national conversations, and yet CNN popped up. They've mentioned you on The View a couple of times in the last week. So your national profile has altered.
Yeah, and what is the comment on The View? I've never heard of this guy. I've said for a long time, and I gave a long lecture that I did a lot of research for on the state of American politics over at the Kennedy School about 8 or 9 days before the midterms. And I said something I've said a lot, which is that the American public is not interested in extremes, that both parties are far too partisan for the vast majority of Americans, that blaming Americans for being divided when it's the parties that spend most of their time dividing people is a bad way to govern, and that we need to move on from this. And that message is one I've been delivering for years.
But I don't hear you saying, no, I'll never run. So are you leaving the door open just a little bit, just in case?
I think anybody in public life, never slams anything completely, but but I'm certainly not going to. I'm not going to be a candidate in 2024.
Point blank.
Period.
Sentence. Okay. Moving on. You did a great.
If I don't say that, my wife will be very unhappy with me.
Well, how about running for any public office? Do you discount that possibility? I mean, is that as good of a? Does that apply also to any public office, not
you mean
just the
2024?
Any time in the future.
No, I'm not going to rule out ever running for anything.
Okay. You did a great job moving homeless families out of hotels and motels, but numbers are starting to climb a little bit, not dramatically because of the migrants that are coming into Massachusetts. Some found their way here some of them found their way here on their own. Some of them were foisted on the state.
Yep.
Do you welcome more of them to Massachusetts?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say is that this whole issue is absolutely a function of what's gone on at the border for the last few years. I mean, I think the final legal crossings in 22, federal fiscal year 22, which ended earlier this fall, was north of 2 million, which is just a staggering number relative to the numbers we've seen historically. And everybody is dealing with the consequences of that, including us. We've asked the Biden administration for a number of things. The biggest one is to make it possible for these people, many of whom don't have the status, to be able to work until their asylum process is finished. Some can't even start that whole thing for 180 days after they arrive, which leaves states like ours stuck trying to figure out how to solve that problem for these people. I also filed at the end of the week legislation to help us deal with the legislature that included money for housing, but also resources and permission to come up with a strategy to deal with the kids, right? Because a lot of these kids are going to end up in school, and we need a better approach to that. And I think one of the things we filed can help deal with this. But until somebody does something about the border, this is just going to keep happening. And in Massachusetts, we'll do whatever we can to help these people get settled. But most of them were fleeing terrible, awful places. They want to work, and they are seeking asylum, and they should be able to work while they seek asylum.
And
you'll never turn them away. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis' staff was gleeful about sending migrants here. Politically, was that just smart politics? Just that? Was it smart politics?
Well, now we're into the whole question that my Godkin lecture at Harvard was about, which is people who think this whole game is about politics don't understand for most people it's about progress and what did you actually accomplish. I don't happen to think that sort of thing accomplishes anything. It's not a solution for anything. As far as the records are concerned these people were lied to with respect to where they were going and what they would get when they got there. And again, I think the goal here should be deal with the issues at the border, pass legitimate legislation to deal with immigration, and for the people who are here, we should be doing what we can to give them the ability, while they seek asylum, to do what everybody else does here, which is work.
Would you vote for Ron DeSantis for president?
I'm not even thinking about 2024, and I really do believe as we head into what will continue to be a very expensive holiday season for most people, they're not thinking about that either.
Let's turn to something more within Massachusetts borders. As you leave office, the MBTA remains in crisis, with the federal government breathing down its neck. Under your watch, the criticism, for the most part, has been there's been too much expansion and not enough maintenance. Are the critics wrong about that?
Yes. First of all, the bus system's in better shape than it's been in, certainly since we took office. The buses are newer, the routes are better, we have more rapid bus lanes. The bus proposal that got voted on by the board earlier this week to expand the bus system will dramatically improve service, but we've done a lot of work on the bus system over the past 8 years. And the single biggest problem we have there is the same problem every transportation system has right now, which is drivers. We used to have lotteries for drivers to determine who would be lucky enough to become one. Now the biggest issue is filling the seats. The commuter rail's in far better shape than it was when we took office. Let me finish, because this is important. The Green Line, we've done a ton of work on. It's in much better shape than it was in when we took office. The Ride's in much better shape than we took office. The Orange Line and the Red Line, which were the two oldest lines that had a whole series of reforms primarily associated with the new cars that got tripped up by both the pandemic and federal legislation, are getting there, but they're going to be the biggest challenge, I think, for the next administration.
There's been some talk about...
Look, we spent billions on investing in the core system. And I said at the time we took office, I said, we're going to spend tons of money on modernizing the core system, which has been underinvested in for decades. And the reason no one does that is because you never get credit for it. What you get credit for is expansion. We're going to focus on investing in the core system, and we won't get any credit for it. And guess what? We don't get any credit for it. But that's where most of the money that we spent went, and that's where it should have gone.
And do you think the state, there's been some talk about the state taking over some of the debt, at least 50% of the debt of the MBTA? Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
I haven't heard that. I think the MBTA's debt position is much better than it was 10, 15 years ago. Look, the state, for all intents and purposes, has an operating funding relationship with the T, and through the CTF, it also has a capital relationship, a bonding relationship with the T. That's always been the case. How people choose to arrange those particular relationships, that's always up for discussion and debate.